Our story begins in a small rural village in West Africa. This is the story of a young girl named Amina. Amina stood at the edge of the village, gazing at the horizon where the sun dipped beneath the vast, endless sky. She had almost imagined herself walking this path as the young girl, innocent and unafraid. But now she felt like an alien in her own skin, her past echoing with pain, her present suffocating under the weight of tradition. At just 10, Amina's life had been torn from her in an excruciating moment. The ceremony that should have marked her coming of age, the initiation into womanhood, had instead marked the beginning of a silent torment. The court, as it was called, was carried out in the secrecy of the night, away from the prying eyes of men. There was no warning, no comfort, no pain medicine, just cold hands and a dark, unfeeling blade. Pain, worse than anything she could have ever imagined, rushed to her. She had heard the whistles before, the stories shared by women whose bodies had betrayed them. But those were always other women. No, not her. Not the daughters of Gizfimage. And yet, there she was, lying on the cold earth, her world shattering as everything she once knew about herself was erased. The scar on her body would heal with time, but the scar on her heart would never fade. Years passed. Amina's body recovered, but the invisible wounds festered. She became a shadow of herself, a woman trapped between two worlds. The girls in her village had all gone through the same ritual, but they didn't see what she saw. They didn't feel the shattering silence that had clung to her for years. Amina's quiet rebellion simmered inside her. It was a rebellion against her identity, her own mother, and the life she had known. But what could she do? The practice of female genital mutilation was so ingrained in the cultural web of her community that even questioning it was seen as a betrayal. Questioning the practice was seen as a sign of weakness. Yet Amina could no longer live in silence. Her pain, though buried, screamed for release. Her first step towards healing came when she met Zainab, a woman who had suffered the same fate. Zainab introduced her to a quiet group of women, each carrying the same silent scars, some deeper than others. They had survived the ritual, but none of them were without horrific stories. They told stories of the horrors they have had to endure due to the side effects of the ritual. Some had difficulty bearing children, others had urination problems, still others had infections. These women became Amina's lifeline. In whispered meetings held in dark corners of the village, Amina began to learn. She began to fight, not only for herself, but for the next generation of girls. She would not let them endure what she had. Together with Zainab and others, she founded a movement, an underground rebellion against an age-old tradition that had never been questioned. It was a dangerous path, one filled with fear and uncertainty. The elders of the village were not so easily swayed, and to speak out meant risking everything. Then came Leila, Amina's younger sister, whose heart was full of the innocence Amina once had. But Leila was not blind. She had seen the way Amina withdrew from life, the way she flinched at any touch, the way she could no longer speak of her own past without pain clouding her eyes. Lena had her own questions, and the more she saw Amina suffering, the more she began to doubt the tradition she was about to inherit. Lena's internal battle tore at her. She had grown up hearing the stories about how this ritual made women pure, how it bound them to their ancestors and their heritage. But what Lena saw in her sister was not purity. It was brokenness. Lena decided to confront their mother, to challenge the beliefs that had shaped their family. This was a betrayal in the eyes of the community. It was an act of defiance that could shatter the very foundation of their lives. But Lena was no longer the naive girl she once was. She was determined to become the voice of the voiceless, to be the symbol of hope for girls who had not yet been marked by this brutal tradition. Then came Mariam. Mariam was a woman of many years, a midwife who had seen the after effects of this practice. She had helped countless women endure the procedure, convinced it was her duty to maintain tradition. But over time, Mariam began to see the destruction she had helped perpetuate. She saw the women in agony, the broken marriages, the children born prematurely, the screams that echoed in the night. It was a painful truth, but a truth she could no longer ignore. Mariam had always been a part of the system. Now, she would become part of the change. She began working secretly with Amina's group, offering restorative surgeries and medical help to the women who had been physically scarred. She gave them a voice, helped them reclaim what was lost. The work was dangerous, especially with the elders and men watching. But Mariam knew she could never go back to being silent. The weight of her past actions haunted her, but every knife she helped heal made her feel a little closer to redemption. As Amina's advocacy grew, so did the stakes. Her movement, though powerful, was being met with so much resistance. A village was divided. Some saw the truth Amina and her allies spoke of, while others clung to tradition as if it was their very breath. The tension reached its peak when Amina's mother, the very woman who had once pushed her to accept the ritual, found herself face to face with the brutal reality of its aftermath. Amina had grown too strong, too defiant. Layla, on the other hand, had become a vocal activist, spreading word of the suffering going on in the village. They were both pushing for a world where women were not bound by the chains of tradition. Their mother, thrown between the loyalty of her family and her tradition, was about to make a choice. It was a fierce battle that would determine not only their futures, but the future of every girl born into this world. Would tradition triumph, or would the courage of these women forge a new path? Let us know in the comments below. The reckoning came with an unforgettable moment. The village gathered, the elders spoke, and the truth that had been hidden for many generations was laid bare. It was a moment of fire and fury, of voices raised and hearts broken. Amina, Layla, Mariam, and the others stood together, not just as survivors, but as warriors. They had fought for their voices to be heard, for the darkness to be exposed, and for their sisters to live free from the weight of this brutality. And so Amina's journey is one of survival, transformation, and redemption. It is also a source of hope for every woman and girl who has ever felt the weight of this brutality. Through their struggle, they will show the world that even in the darkest corners of tradition, the human spirit is indomitable. While this practice still carries on in some cultures, women like Amina, will still keep fighting.